right, video's playing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to World Builders Weekly. My name's Gray, and I am the Executive Director for Worldbuilders.
And I am Zoe Rickenbach, and I am the graphic designer for Worldbuilders.
And this week we are talking about young adult fiction, and we have wonderful special guests. We have Gretchen True from a woman's Room of One's Own bookstore in Madison, Wisconsin, and there'll be a link to that in the chat. It is our favorite brick and mortar bookstore in the world. And also Harvey, who is a young artist, an avid reader of science fiction and fantasy, and entirely coincidentally, my grandson. Or rather, I should say, I am his grandfather. So that we are happy to have them here. Thank you both for showing up. It's a pleasure to see you both here. But of course, first we have to start by talking about our Trivia Tuesday situations. Oh, I should add, because we are celebrating this and because there is a great talkback coming out from Lainey Taylor, who is the author of the Daughter and Smoke and Bone trilogy, we will be giving away during this broadcast a signed copy of all three books in that Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. So if you want to enter that, the thing is, I think it's exclamation point trilogy, I believe is what you put it in there. No exclamation point needed, the engineer says. Yes, just type in trilogy in chat. Now I should add, these books are going to be signed Thursday, and then they have to get to us. So it's not going in the mail today, but it is coming. All right, so I'm going to do the old trivia question because I'm old, and then Zoe, you can do the new trivia question. Does that work?
That sounds great.
Cool. So, and Gretchen Harvey, if you know the answer to this, feel free. Although if you know the answer to this, Harvey, then I'm going to have a talk with your mother. In the television adaptation of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire book series, Arya is given a loaf of bread in the shape of an animal by Hot Pie. What animal does the bread resemble? Now, I should have gotten this one because I've read the books and I've seen the series, but I did not know the answer to it. So do any of you know the answer? Zoe, you might, because...
I know the answer because I've been watching it come in on the social medias all week, but otherwise I wouldn't have, no.
No, Gretchen? No idea?
I don't.
Can I guess?
Sure,
yeah,
go ahead.
you can guess.
A rabbit.
Close!
Good guess.
But it's actually a wolf or dire wolf. And that's because her house Stark, the symbol, the animal symbol is a dire wolf. I think a dire rabbit would also be a pretty scary thing to have. I just recently watched a D&D game where there was a dire penguin. That ended up
cool.
beating up everybody. So if you message us with wolf or dire wolf, then you are entered into the winning the prize. And this is the last week of the month. So we'll be announcing what the prize was at our next World Builders Weekly. In the meantime, we have a new trivia question. Now this trivia question, please do not answer it right away because we want the answers to come in DMs, direct messages on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram, Facebook. Am I missing a YouTube?
YouTube.
Any of those things. And Go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, now this one is near and dear to my heart, not because I've ever played this game, but because my older child has played this game so much and we have so much value of cards in my house currently. What are the 5 basic land types in Magic the Gathering? So if I might even know, even without ever having played, but I'm not going to say.
Yeah, you know, I should know this. I used to play Magic. I actually played Magic when I was in another life, when I was running an after-school program. And I would play it at Hamilton School there in Madison.
Well, I can honestly say that my son, you know, occasionally will go back through his Magic cards and look them up, and has discovered that he has several that are over, you know, $500, $600,000. for one card, which is crazy in my opinion. But as much money as we spent on them, I kind of get it.
Yeah, and you know, I've heard some people that have made a lot of money because they saved their magic cards and now they're worth a whole bunch of stuff. But anyway,
we had the luck of buying some from somebody who had done that, which is why we have so many that are worth so much.
Cool. Well, I actually miss playing Magic. I wish it's hard to play in a pandemic world, but so let's get to our actual topic, since Gretchen and Harvey were nice enough to show up. So Harvey ended up getting put into this because when I was doing research for this particular thing, I said, hey, I know a young adult. I should talk to him and see if he reads books. And he said, curable, which is actually autocorrect, somehow putting the wrong word in the chat. But then he listed off a whole bunch of books. We just lost him. There we are. He listed off a whole bunch of books, that some of which I heard of and some of which I hadn't. And so, Harvey, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you on chat. What kind of science fiction and fantasy books would you recommend? Do you like?
Well, Artemis Fowl is a good series. Harry Potter, obviously, is a good fiction series. The City of Ember I recently finished, and it's a good book that I like.
Oh, good.
A Wrinkle in Time is another good book to read.
I'm so proud. Harvey, I will say you surprised me when you said A Wrinkle in Time in our chat. I was like, oh, people still remember A Wrinkle in Time? That was awesome. That one and the other two books in that trilogy were some of my favorites.
Have you ever read The Phantom Tollbooth?
Yeah, I read that. It's a good book.
Yeah, that's a good one too, in that same realm.
Yeah. Actually, you guys can't see this, but in the chat, people are definitely giving you some kudos there. Artemis Fowl, people like. Wrinkle in Time, people are liking. Yeah, some people are saying, I'm realizing I might not have grown up, which I think that's actually why, especially why we have Zoe here, because Zoe was like, I read all those books. And I'm like, that's really cool, because I don't as much anymore.
It's all I read. I spend, like I've literally, I just finished my 5th book of the year. And they're almost all YA books. That's just what I love to read. Have you read the Golden Compass series?
No, I have not. I've heard it.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Yes, you should definitely read the Golden Compass series. And I was saying earlier, I think the Ranger series would be a really good one for you. I think you would enjoy that. It's called The Ranger's Apprentice. And I don't know how many books, Gretchen, do you know how many books The Ranger's Apprentice has?
A lot. I want to say there's like 10.
Yeah, I was going to say 17.
I read those, but yeah. One that I just read with my son, but I think would be great for like up through like age 12 or more, The Wild Robot. I don't know if you've read that one. It's The Wild Robot and The Wild Robot Returns. It's by Peter Brown, who's a UK illustrator and author, but this one's like a middle grade book. It's so kind and good. It's about a robot that gets washed up on an island and has to learn to like live with and in community with all the animals that live on the island. And it has really good art, and like it just like really sparks both the imagination and like kind of your feelings about conservation and community. Just a really good book for these times.
Yeah.
The question came up from the chat. How about the Porson trilogy by Garth Nix?
Don't know that one.
No?
Is that like Sabriel and Lyriel? I've read Sabriel. Yeah. I read that one. I know a lot of people who love him.
I have a kind of a hard question. Harvey, I'll start with you on this, and it's for everybody, but we'll start with Harvey. What, if you can figure out, what is it about a book that grabs you? Like if you pick up a book, do you know what it is in that book that makes you go, yeah, this is something I'm going to want to read more of?
Well, do you mean what makes me want to pick out a book to read, or what makes me want to keep reading a book?
Yes, to both of those. Good question.
Both good questions.
Yeah.
Okay. What makes me want to read the book more is if I enjoy it and it what makes me want to read a book more is if it has good plot points and I can tell that it's gonna go on more and it's gonna become more interesting in the story.
And what makes you want to pick up a book? Like, is it good cover art? Or?
3 reasons. If the title interests me, if the book cover interests me, or if people recommend it to me.
That makes sense.
Okay.
One other thing that I often... Oh, go ahead. I was going to say one other thing I often use is most books will have quotes on them from other authors or readers. And I like to use those to see if they give me any clues about, oh, I like that author's book, so maybe I'll like this book because they recommend it. Or sometimes the quote itself will say something interesting that will intrigue me about like what the reading experience of the book is. So that's one thing I kind of figured out to look for.
I also will take the book title and Google books that are similar to, or if you liked this book, what, other books to read. And then you find one in there that you love, and then you do that again, and you go down a giant rabbit hole, and then you spend way too much money at the bookstore and or at the library. Rabbit holes, definitely.
Yeah.
Good rabbit holes.
I haven't read young adult fiction in a while, but at the time I read a lot of science fiction stuff. Have Spacesuit Will Travel was a book that I read over and over again, which is by Robert Heinlein, which has, pluses and minuses to the particular genre written by him. But it was funny, before the thing, I was like, I remember there was also a trilogy that had like alien tripods in it. And I can't remember what it was called. Turns out it was called The Tripods Trilogy by John Christopher. And that one, for me, the thing that I liked about both of those books was the literal representation. Like the characters in it were young boys who were, interested in technology and making things and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Of course I'm going to want to read these. And I read them through, and of course they went off to do heroic things, which made me imagine that I could then go on and do heroic things. When I think about it in that way, it reminds me of why it's important to read, to have representation in things, because I am sure that even if my sisters enjoyed those books, it wouldn't have had the same resonance as it would for me. Just like I'm sure that, like, I really enjoyed Anne of Green Gables, but I'm sure I enjoyed it on a different level than someone who related more to the character. So that was my thought.
Yeah, I find that most of the books I've been reading have been female characters who, represent themselves as female. But I still enjoy a lot of the books that are not that way. And I'm finding that my children are wanting to read books that are more specifically to my children. So, that tends to be the way that I look for books sometimes, and get new categories. Definitely.
Harvey, I also have to read the joke that your mother just made in the chat, because this is a podcast. You know how your mom rates her books? She rates them based on how much moisture is on their pages and how loud they sound when she drops them on the floor. And she calls this the Dewey Decibel system.
Oh, no. That's terrible. No.
Possible she might be related to
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I tend to pick out books by their covers. So I'm a graphic designer, so this is not at all surprising. And I belong to several Facebook groups in which authors put up potential covers, and we talk about how to make it different to fit into a genre. So I am 100% the book by her cover kind of person. That's how I choose my books, and there is something to be said for that. In picking out. But I also do pick out books that other people recommend. I have some other recommendations for Harvey. I think that you should read have you ever read the Unwanted series?
No.
That is a lovely series in which they are, again, really, it's a world in which you're not allowed to have any art. And if you show any artistic sense, then you're sent off to a different island.
Ooh, I would like that, Harvey. That would speak to your.
And they're killed, but I'm just going to spoil it because it's spoiled in the first chapter of the first book. They're not killed, and they live their own world, but everybody thinks that they're all gone. Yeah. And they have magical powers, and they learn how to do these things, and they learn, what their arts are and that kind of stuff. And they are a lovely series of books that I highly recommend for somebody in your age group, definitely.
We're going to make a list of all the books that are recommended in here, and we will put it up. I know I say that about a lot of different lists of books that we do, but we try. Yeah.
I have one for Harvey too. This one, it just came out this week. It's called Amari and the Night Brothers, maybe last week. I just started listening to it. It's very, very good. Let's see if we can get it to be less shiny. It's about a young woman who her brother has gone missing, and she just lost her scholarship at a school. And it turns out her brother has been involved in this magical underworld, and he basically comes and gets her and says, hey, do you want to join the bureau? And supposedly he might still be dead or not. She doesn't know because he kind of sent a recorded hologram of himself to her. So now she's going on this magical journey to find him. Everyone I know who's read this book has loved it, so I'm very excited to be listening to it. It's supposed to be really fun.
Put it on my list.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm actually I found a link to it in our Worldbuilders Market audiobook store. So it is on audiobooks as well.
Yeah. And have you ever heard or read Peter and the Starcatchers? That's another one that I love. So it's a different story about Peter Pan. And a different world, and it's written by, and I hate to say this, but it's written by Dave Barry and another guy. That's how I refer to it. His name is Pearson. But I never remember the other guy's name. I always just remember David Barry because he's, kind of funny. But Peter and the Starcatchers is really, really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Harvey, real quick.
And that's a series of 3, I think.
Right. Harvey, before you have to leave, I have one more follow-up question. I know you mentioned to me that or I think you said earlier on that you have read you read the Harry Potter series 3 times. What other books have you read more than once, and why? Why do you keep going back to the books and you already know what's going to happen?
I don't really. When I can't find new books, I go back to the same ones that I read, or if a book really interests me, I usually read it more than one time. Because if you only read a book that you really like once, then you might have missed some of the finer details that you didn't pay a lot of attention to, or missed the first time you read it. Because a lot of times in book series, they make connections all the way from the first book to maybe the last book or something that you would have missed if you only read it once.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Do they also kind of make you? I sometimes find myself rereading books because it makes me feel at home. You know, there are several series that I've read so many times that I know everything, but it just makes me feel like comfortable and cozy to like reread it.
How about you, Gretchen?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few books that I reread. I have done less of that in recent years, but a lot of times I feel like I get a lot out of the first read in terms of plot. And my second read is often much more about character and like kind of the mood and experience of the story. But yeah, subsequent reads often are because I just love the characters and I feel like they're family and I want to be around them again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are scenes that I like. In particular, I'm a big fan of the whole, I'll say, I'll call it the hell with it scene. And it's any scene where somebody is like up against insurmountable odds and they're like, I'm going to go ahead and try for it anyway. You know, whatever that may be. And I will read a book just to sort of get up and read that scene one more time where they are ready to go. Frodo in Shelob's lair is a moment like that when he's like, you know what, I'm going to die here, but I'm going to keep going anyway.
I call that emotional outsourcing when I go to a book because I want to have like an emotional experience that book can pull out of me. Sometimes it's like just a really intense feeling of some kind, but yeah. Also, I feel like I return to books like year to year because I'm changing and my experience of the book will change with that. Like, you know, I've been rereading a lot of my childhood favorites because I have a kid now and we're reading books to him. But yeah, like my experience of those books is way different now than it was when I first read them.
Right. Harvey, has that ever changed for you? Like in a book, have you read it again later on and been like, oh, I never thought about that?
Yeah. When I first read the Harry Potter series, it was 3 or 4 years ago. When I was 7 or 8. And I reread it a couple months ago. So yeah, there is some things that I can see or understand more of now than I did when I was 7 or 8.
Nice. Well, Harvey, I know that you need to get off to your class. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time here and it's good to see you. And yeah, have fun at school and we'll touch base again and see about if we can get you the full list of all the books that these people have recommended today.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, bye. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. And thank you.
Such a well-mannered young
man. Yes, he is. Yeah. So, and, you know, and I was thinking about this as we're, you know, talking, and there is definitely a difference of level of, you know, books that I would recommend to people under 13 and YA books that are, you know, there's a definite divide between the two. And because, you know, some of them are not appropriate for 12-year-olds. And sometimes I like I'm reading a book and hand it to my son and say, there's a lot of sex in this book, so just be forewarned. But he's 17 and he doesn't care, you know. But you know, there is definitely a divide. I have a huge list of books that I've read, and many of them I wouldn't recommend to your grandson.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I have having raised kids, and actually, my daughter's in the chat here. I remember once that my kids and I were watching a video of Highlander, okay? Because we love swords and sword fights and da-da-da, it was great. And in the movie, all of a sudden they had a sex scene and it was explicit, like you could see, I think you could see his butt or something like that in the show. And I was like out of my chair, rushing to stop the VCR lest my kids be corrupted by that. And then I'm like, so it's okay for them to watch people hacking each other's heads off and throwing each other off of buildings, but not okay for them to see two consenting adults showing affection for each other.
Yeah.
There's an issue there. And the other
for me, it's more my kids one of my kids does not want to read that kind of stuff. And he'll get that book and he'll read it and he'll be like, yeah, Mom, there was sex in this? No.
Yeah, my kid, like, he definitely, yeah, right. He definitely kind of self-selects very clearly. Like, he's going to be 5 in March, so he's still pretty young, but like he doesn't want anything with conflict in it, which means we basically watch Totoro on repeat. But like, you know, like even Frozen will be like, which he was obsessed with the characters in Frozen for a long time, but he won't watch it because the ice monster is too scary. And every so often, like, we're like, buddy, it was like a year ago that you thought that maybe it'll be different now. No, I don't want to, you know? So like, they're very clear, and like letting kids kind of like manage their own boundaries is kind of part of raising them well, rather than just like censoring things ahead of them.
Yeah. My son would not watch Paddington Bear. The movie Paddington Bear came out, and the bad guy is a woman who is not terrible, but he's like, nope, it's too scary. I don't want to watch that. You know, so and you just gotta kind of let them, you know, do what they think is right. So for me, it's more just, I'm guessing that probably your grandson isn't interested in some of these other like books that have more of that kind of stuff. Maybe he will be at some point. I'm sure he will.
I try not to prejudge. Like, I'm always delighted if they say something that I am interested in, but at the same time, I don't want to decide that he, you know, if I like it, he'll like it, and if I don't like it, he won't like it. The Black Cauldron gave me nightmares as a kid. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, talking about that kind of. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as when I was a child, sorry, my cat is banging at my door. When I was a child, my father took me to see, because he read it and he thought it was fantastic, he took me to see the movie Clockwork Orange. And I was 13. I never will forget that. And like sitting there with my parents during that, oh God, yeah, no, this is not something that, you know, so some amount of limiting, I think, is okay.
I feel so much better about my choices as a parent now. I think it's
yeah, honestly, like, and they also took me to see Jaws when I was 4. So and left me in the theater.
So you never swam again.
Yeah.
So right. I lived on a tidal river next to the ocean. So like, I think that there can be some happy medium between let your children do whatever and kind of put a little boundaries on it.
I mean, like helping them choose things that will fit them. Like, you know.
Yes. I'm going to swerve us back towards the literary world.
Yes.
The world of movies. One thing I found interesting, and I could be wrong, but I don't think anybody has given recommendations of the sort of the classic dystopian stuff that has been out there. Like, nobody mentioned Hunger Games. Nobody mentioned
Divergent.
Divergent, yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of. I mean, Tripods. The Tripods trilogy was a dystopia. It was a post-apocalypse kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well,
they're here. So this Dustlands is. This one is a dystopia kind of world.
They're less popular for the middle grade books, which is what mostly Harvey was talking about, where it seems like we tended towards middle grade, and there are just not as many dystopias in that genre. Age
series.
Saying, why would you want to read about it when we live in one?
Yeah.
This series, the Selection series, is an amazing series. And it sounds like it would be really floofy, but this is like the last one, I think, in the series. But again, a dystopian world where it's really well done. I don't know. There's a lot of dystopian books that I love.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm one of the few people that did like the Divergent series, and
I love the Divergent
actually
series.
Over the holiday, Natasha and I rewatched all of the, go back into movies, all of the Hunger Games movies, just like binge watched them all straight through. and they hold up, and it's a really good story, and you actually get a lot out of the character arcs when you're immersed with that. But
I think there's something too.
Go ahead.
There's something too about like when something's really popular, there's sort of like a little backlash later, like, oh, everyone was into Divergent for a while, you know. But like, and we get this all the time, like, oh, everybody wants to read Where the Crawdads Sing, fine, because like whatever book is selling over and over. But like, you know, there's something to why a book becomes popular and why it becomes kind of like it breaks out and becomes sort of a cultural conversation about things. And sure, that often means that it's like got the white straight protagonist and the like, you know, like reductive world building that doesn't really hold up if you think it through kind of thing. But like again, like the emotional outsourcing of the experience of watching those, the ways that you find an in to characters that maybe aren't as complex or specific as you might want makes them like really easy to project yourself onto as a reader in a lot of ways. And like thinking about, oh, if I was faced with this challenge, what would I do? Would I have the bravery? I would need to, you know, foment a revolution. I don't know. Hope so.
Yeah.
I just finished this book, and this book was very interesting in the sense that it didn't have your standard white protagonist. And the thing that I loved about it is that every time she introduced a character, she would say, the white guy, or, you know, like she would just assume that everybody was not white. And she just told us about the white people. Basically, she was like, hey, and this guy, by the way, is white, which I found very interesting because that's exact opposite of what you see in most books. So that was really lovely.
I think I saw Neil Gaiman talk about that as a concept a long time ago. I think when he was writing Anansi Boys was like, when you have a character of color who's your protagonist, their default isn't going to be white. And so like, that's when you start marking the unmarked default, because that's the experience of your protagonist. But yeah, right. that is always an interesting approach when an author goes that way.
Yeah,
I like that.
In the chat, a couple of more suggestions came out, like the Tamara Pierce series, which I've never actually read any of them, but I know that my kids really, really love them.
Which book, which series was that? What's the book
Tamara Pierce? I don't remember what the name of the
probably the Tortall ones.
Right.
I don't know.
Maybe the Circle of Magic, like Alana. Oh man, I read those so many times. Horse Girl, like purple-eyed magic horse girl. She dressed up as a boy. They're great.
Would Tamara Pierce be kind of the equivalent of Andre Norton for a new generation? Because I just know that a lot of Tamara Pierce's stuff had a lot to do with animals and humans and things like that. And a lot of the Andre Norton books that I read were sort of human-animal hybrid kind of things. When I
honestly couldn't say. I've only read like one or two Andre Norton kind of outliers, like adult books. So I know that she was like vastly influential and important, but it was like sort of the generation before me. But yeah. Maybe.
And also Dragonlance, which, you know, would that qualify as young adult? I kind of feel like, I feel like they might as well, because I certainly read them as a youth.
I feel like there's a huge change that has happened, especially in the past 20 or so years, in terms of marketing and genre, that not only do we now have young adult as a category, and it means a specific age range of like 13 to 18. So many adults read young adult that a lot more young adult books are toward the older end, just like you were pointing out, Zoe, like to try and capture that. And now there's the new adult genre, which is supposed to be like young adult, but more sexy, like, you know, college bound kind of.
Okay.
And like some of that is like publishers trying to position books to reach the like perfect audience, but also a maximal audience. But like, if you think about it, like, was there a young adult section versus a middle grade section when you were growing up, Gray, like at the library?
No, I don't think so. It was just,
there wasn't even really, I mean, there sort of was for me. And that's why I read so many adult sci-fi books, because most of them didn't really have that explicit of sex. Like it was mostly PG-13 or whatever, fade to black sort of stories. But, and like now that like, you know, prestige TV has made things very, you know, gritty and like, there's no topic that's too, you know, much for adults anymore. It's less like, I wouldn't have been venturing as avidly into the sci-fi section at 11 if the sci-fi section looked like it does now versus what it did when I was 11, which is almost years ago.
Yeah, some other ones that have not been going, have been mentioned just real quick, Zoe, is the Anne McCaffrey books, the Dragon Riders of Pern books.
Love those, so rapey.
Earthsea. And come to think of it, there's also, all of the Xanth books, which have a lot of problematic aspects. I see a lot of people going, no, but it has to be fair. That was something.
I read all of them.
Yeah, I know. It's like you're there. And also the
when I was 10.
Mercedes Lackey. There's like 70 books in that one. So Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon, the works that they did, the world they created with the Valdemar is amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to say that one of
queer representation as well.
I have some books that came out recently we could talk about. Can we put a pin in me and go back to
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Gretchen pinned. Go ahead, Zoe.
Oh, I was going to say that I think it's really interesting too that we're seeing a whole genre of YA books that are based on fairy tales. And fairy tale, have taken an arc off of the original stories and made them different. I have a whole series of them over here that, like the Lunar Chronicles, which the first book is Cinder for Cinderella, and she's part robot, part human. There's a whole series of books. I'm trying to think. This one, not that one. There's another one that I just recently read that was there's a whole bunch of them that are now taking off of these original stories that we all knew and changing them into something different. And I love to see that. And that's one of the reasons why I liked that Peter and the Starcatchers, is because it's just a different way to look at what happened to Peter Pan. The Cinder is just a different way of looking at Cinderella and Red Riding Hood and all of those pieces.
So you're saying it's just fan fiction?
It's fan fiction, only really well thought out.
I'm joking because of the whole storm about fan fiction. There's nothing wrong with fan fiction.
There's a lot of great fan fiction out there. There's a whole thing about like how fairy tales are considered to be this sort of like cultural touchstone. Like they have certain values that they're trying to impart, and like it's been a project for a long time to try and update them. Like you've got like Angela Carter, who wrote like feminist versions of various fairy tales in like the 70s, and it's like Emma Donoghue had a really great collection called Kissing the Witch that I read when I was a baby queer. But yeah, it's a project that you're seeing a lot more of because it's familiar enough that people will be like, oh, that's not going to be totally weird. Like I at least know what the bones of this story are. And I'm going to see like a different take on it. And that's really appealing to people, but also like, when do we get like, do Black people get to have like, a million different versions of fairy tales? Yes, they should. Actually, one of the books I wanted to talk about today, Legendborn, is really great. It's a young adult book. I wish I had a copy here, but I've sold them all. But it's about a young Black girl who turns out to be like mixed up in this sort of secret society at her college of people who are descended from the original King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. But also she has access to it's called root magic, which basically was descended from her slave ancestors who were stolen from Africa. And the book just does this really interesting work of untangling like the levels of racism and privilege in the stories that it's working with, but it also deploys them in a really good way. Like, oh, you know what happened with Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So you have like a certain kind of backstory in your head of what this book is going to be, but it doesn't do that. So it was really an interesting take on that kind of a fairy tale legends sort of story. The other thing I wanted to Legendborn by Tracy Dion. It's in one of the links I emailed you. But yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. The other interesting thing is I have a 5-year-old, like I said, and we haven't really been reading like fairy tales to him because so many of them are just like, you know, like the Grimm's fairy tales or whatever kids books that there are out there. Just most of them aren't very up to date. And also he's just not that interested in them. But like I've started to try to introduce him to mythology and everything. And he's like, I don't get it. Like, so it's going to be interesting when we get to stories like, I think we tried to watch like Shrek with him, but he didn't have any cultural reference for any of the things in Shrek because they're all based on, you know, fairy tales. So I don't know what the next generation will have.
Honestly, I think that things like Star Wars are becoming the new mythology. You know?
That's true.
One thing I didn't
I will say that my younger son is a huge fairy tale fan and will read a lot of fairy tales. Even
it might just be an age thing. Yeah.
Well, it might be. He is 13, but he's always been into them. So, you know, it's hard to say.
Yeah. I did make a list before this of, I wanted to wait until Harvey was gone because I didn't want to, you know, make him sad. But I thought about some books that I look back on that I read. I'm like, they lied to me. You know, what kind of lies did young adult books teach me? And so my short, not exclusive list is, they lied to tell me that I could live in a museum, that I could live on my side of the mountain. They told me that I was only special if I was secretly the last member of an ancient or magical bloodline, that I could return to Witch Mountain, that I could build a spacesuit in my backyard and travel, that the fur coats in my grandma's closet would lead to Narnia. And probably one of the worst lies that it told me, which I think they meant to do well, a lot of the heroes in my books basically would go and if they wanted to learn something, they would read a book on it. And then they would be able to do the thing.
Right.
And so
like
I had this
learning
idea that if I needed to do something, all I needed to do was read a book about it and I would be good at it. And I remember that I first started to get disillusioned about this when I was going to try out for the basketball team in my middle school. And I had never really played basketball before, but I thought I'll just read a book on it. And I read a book on basketball and then showed up for practice and discovered that
didn't make the team.
It did not translate through. So those are the things that kind of like I got disillusioned by. I was curious if there's anything that you remember reading and you're like, this was a lie.
Well, I'm going to just say one thing, though. I saw in the paper this morning that there's a guy who's been living for the last like 3 or 4 months in the O'Hare airport. So you might be able to live in a museum. So I'm not sure about that one.
Good point.
I mean, I knew that I wouldn't be able to impress a dragon, but having to live in this reality is not as great as that would have been.
Where is my dragon? Yeah, that's true. True. Someone else said we homed foster kids who only knew Disney fairy tales. You know, there's both I don't know. Are they getting better? Are they getting less lying? I mean,
a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, they're trying.
I think Frozen is actually pretty good. Like, it's not perfect, but it's a much better like message than you know, Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Micronex says, I believe for a long time, if I tried hard enough, I could manifest magical powers.
Yeah.
That's true. Although I kind of like, I apply Clark's law to that, is that, you know, sufficiently leveraged technology is indistinguishable from magic, you know? Hey Siri, what's the temperature?
Yeah. That's kind of magic.
You know, magic. A magical fairy told me the temperature. Any other lies that you? Oh wait, we were going to stick a pin in it. Let's
yeah, I want to talk about some new books.
Tell us the books.
Let's talk about good
Please.
books.
So this book, I'm just going to kind of do like the book talk quick thing.
Are these all the links that you sent me?
Yep.
Okay.
So first one I want to talk about is Pet. It's by Akwaeke Emezi, who is one of the most interesting writers writing right now. They're incredible. I've read all 3 of their books in basically 3 different genres, and they're all excellent. This one is a young adult book, and it's about a young trans girl named Jam, who lives in a city that has, like, the generation before has rooted out all evil in terms of like people being cruel to one another. It basically has instituted like a utopian central justice kind of thing. But she gets visited by a monster that is like, oh no, there's actually still a monster among you. They refer to like child abusers and sexual predators as monsters in this community. And so this like actual monster crawls out of a painting, and she has to basically decide, like, it's basically a question of how do we enact restorative justice? How do we keep our community from resting on its laurels? And what kinds of powers and choices do young people have to do this really difficult work if their adults are not doing the work as well? It's an incredible book. It does tangentially deal with child abuse. So it's sort of a hard one to recommend to the younger set, but there's nothing that's on screen. And I think it's such an important message and such a beautifully written book. I think everyone should be reading this book if they feel able to. And it just came out in paperback like a week ago, so that's great. One of my coworkers read this one, Elazzo by Darcy. Oh, all these books have foil. Okay, here we go. By Darcy Little Badger, and I have not read it myself, but I have heard great things. It's about a young Native girl who goes on sort of a ghost adventure quest. So if you've been looking for more Native Americans in your young adult, this is a good one. Also The Marrow Thieves by, oh, I'm blanking on her name, Sherry Dimeline. That's an older title. Star Daughter, one of my partners read this one and said it was really good. It's about a young woman who, you know, has secret magic. I don't really know much more offhand about it, but I've heard great things about Shweta Thakrar. I believe I've read something of hers in short fiction, and she's a great writer. So yeah, this is a good one with a very like Indian, Southeast Asian kind of magical system. And then if you are in the mood for something that is more like you want just little tastes of various different authors, there's an anthology that just recently came out edited by Donielle Clayton, and it's a We Need Diverse Books, which I'm assuming most people have heard of this hashtag, but it has some of like the greats that are writing in young adult and middle grade right now. It's got Samira Ahmed, Zoraida Cordova, Tessa Gratton, who wrote another YA book I really loved, Strange Grace, which has like a fairy tale-y kind of feel, but I don't think it's quite a fairy tale. Kwame Mbalia, Rebecca Roanhorse, Tochio Nibuchi, Marco Shiro. So a lot of great people writing in this book. Then another one that I don't have with me because we haven't gotten it in yet, but it comes out in, I think, next month. It's called The Gilded Ones. I have not read that one yet, but it's been getting so much buzz. And I'm blanking on the author's name, Amina Forna or something. Shoot, I should have written it down. I'm sorry. Yeah, but that one is going to be, that one's going to be a really big title in young adult. It's got, it's like kind of African magic. It has a great cover. Wish I could show it to you.
That one I might actually link to. I think we have a pre-order up for it. Yeah, we do for the Gilded.
Okay.
So that one I'm going to link to Worldbuilders Market, but all the other ones we linked to A Room of One's Own bookstore.
It's a really beautiful cover. I agree.
Very much so. Cool. And I have another one, but it's I just got sent an ARC and I can't remember the name of it, so I'll bring it next week.
What is it?
We've got about 5 minutes left, which means I think first it's time to do our drawing. So I think that just is a matter of I'll let the engineer do that, but we'll have a little drum roll, drawing. Should we have first a last call? Yeah. Yep. Last call, type in trilogy for an entry. And by the way, if I win, then Harvey gets it. So there. No, just kidding. If I win, we will draw again. But yeah. And we are going to do that. And here goes the giveaway. Go ahead, Jamie. Where's Zay? Zay's got that. And Mashley. Yeah, I mean, there you go. Did not plan it that way. And we will be giving away more books at the next one, so don't worry about that. Whoever Mashley is, will get in touch with you and see about shipping you those books. Hey, Gretchen, do you have time for us to do our lightning round that we do of just quick questions so we can get to know our guests a little bit better?
Yeah.
And Zoe, do you want to go ahead? You can see on the script where they are. Do you want to go ahead with the first question?
So we are doing this because we want to have different ideas about what to do as we're all stuck here in quarantine. So if you had a choice to have a beverage of your choice right now, assuming you weren't at work, what would be the choice beverage for you?
Or if you're at work, you're the boss.
Or if you're at work,
true.
yeah, I mean,
I could do what I want. Gosh, a beverage that I would want right now. I think like I'd go for one of those super fancy, I'm so basic sometimes. There's a coffee shop nearby that does those like golden milk, oat milk and turmeric latte things. I love those. I love a spicy, savory drink.
Nice.
Okay.
Oh, golden milk. I don't think we've had that answer before.
No, I've not even heard of them, so I like that.
It's very hipster.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I do.
I've had it more than once. Yeah, I'm afraid so. Back in the
I'm not a hipster, apparently.
How about hey Gretchen, you can have anything you want for your next meal. Like what is your well, and let's say that you're looking for something that is comforting. Like what is something that you really enjoy? You're like, yeah, this is my comfort food. My
comfort food is Indian food. I would order from Maharani. I would probably get, if I were going fancy, I would get like, and I was sharing with people, I get chicken tikka masala because again, I'm a basic asshole, but also Navratan korma and lamb korma. And they have this like samosa that they then like drench in yogurt and mint sometimes. And that is really good. It's sort of like it's almost like a pub food appetizer type thing. So.
Sounds delicious.
Nice.
All right. If you could say, own maybe a bookstore and could read any books that you wanted, what would be the book that you would read?
Not restricted to young adult stuff that you've already given.
Not restricted to young adults. Well, just if you happen to know somebody who had a bookstore.
Yeah, if I knew. I would probably answer the books that I am reading because I basically get whatever books I want. It's like one of the best joys of this job. Right now I'm reading the new book from Rivers Solomon that comes out in May, and it's very good. It's called Sorrowland. It's about a young woman who escapes a cult, basically, and she's pregnant and has twins and is like raising them in the wild. But Solomon has such an interesting approach to writing. Like their prose is so unusual so much of the time for like the kinds of things that we typically get in science fiction, that like every page feels like a surprise just in terms of pacing and character and plot. And their characters are often not perfect. So like you're reading this and you're like, oh, I kind of hate that this person's making that choice, but it also feels like a very realistic choice. So that's been kind of like emotionally difficult going in some ways, but like really a good one. And the other one I'm reading right now is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, who I am lucky to have known for a few years, actually. But it's going to be like one of the big gay books in sci-fi. It's a fantasy novel set in kind of ancient China, like 1400s, I think. But it's basically, it's about a woman who dresses up as a boy so that she can go be a monk and escape the poverty that she was born into. And there's a general who's like the term that they're using is eunuch, but like is a genderqueer character, and they are going to have a very intense kneeling scene, and it's going to be great. But like the story is really like gripping and full. It reminds me a little bit of the Poppy War in some ways, like in terms of the pacing and the setting. But the characters are really good and interesting, and there's already like a few different scenes that are sticking with me. So I think that's going to be a really fun one.
Nice. And last question, if you could sit down and have a conversation with anybody, real, imagined, alive, dead, like I can wave my magic wand and poof, that person will appear and sit down and have coffee with you, who would you like to have suddenly manifest?
Gosh. If I could like divorce myself from my anxiety and like, which would make me an impossible person to have any sort of meal with, in that circumstance, anyone that I was truly like wowed by, it would be Octavia Butler. I want to know.
Me too.
I have a tattoo from one of her books. I would show it to her and she'd be like, yikes, get out of here, dude.
Yeah.
But I think she had so much to offer the genre, and I would love to get her take on how things have progressed since we've lost her, and like know what would have happened if we had supported her better when she was alive.
Yeah, and for me also there's a little bit of, sorry we didn't do better. I know you tried to warn us, but we apparently weren't listening.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are at the end of our allotted time. So we will like to thank you, Gretchen, and
yes, thank you.
The absent,
Yeah,
thanks to Harvey for coming on our show. And Zoe, let's go through the tune in next week stuff.
Oh yeah, tune in next week. We want your suggestions. Who are some, I'm going to move this so I can see it. Who are some of your favorite characters, authors, gamers, and developers or artists? Is there a particular guest that you would absolutely adore Worldbuilders hanging out with and chatting with? Let us know by commenting, tagging us on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.
And we have reached out to some of the people that you have suggested already, and they are in the works. So yeah. We also would like to enthusiastically encourage you to check out worldbuildersmarket.com. We have common geek stuff, unique geek stuff, rare geek stuff, and even epic level geek stuff, including autographed editions of your favorite books, various tabletop games, art prints, homewares, such as this beautiful Aeolian mug that I had been product placing throughout the day, clothing, such as this other product placement I have here, and all kinds of stuff. And it supports not only our mission as Being Geeks Doing Good, but it also helps support the same creators that are in your community. So thank you for those of you that come in and do that, and we appreciate your support all the time.
Do you need me to go on? Because I just lost it.
Yep,
I lost the script.
That's all right. If you have comments or compliments or suggestions, if you have compliments, send them to me. If you have complaints, send them to Zay. Or suggestions.
And yeah, none of them to me.
Yeah.
Of course, if you send something to Facebook.
At worldbuilders.org. And we're really glad you joined us. And we will be here next week, same time, same channel. And you can also find replays of this on YouTube shortly after the show.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and I guess let's see, we need to come up with our sign off word. Gretchen, we have a word that we use at the end of the thing to kind of make sure we know people have signed off. And it used to be Vivamoose all the time, except then we realized people know what to expect. And so we try and come up with some variation on that. Zoe, do you want to come up with a different word for the sign off word?
Let's do, does it have to have a moose in it?
Doesn't have to, no.
I was going to say book-a-moose.
Book-a-moose. All right, everybody. Bye-bye, book-a-moose.
Bye.
And we'll see if they have there. There it is.
There it is.
All right, we are gone.